What's the best way to help poor people escape poverty? Progressives and conservatives have very different answers to this question. But before we explore those answers, let's agree on this. Both progressives and conservatives believe that the government has a moral obligation to help those who, through bad luck or unfortunate circumstances, can't help themselves.
Okay, now I'm a little bit worried because we started off with what's the best way to help poor people out of poverty, but okay.
Here's what a conservative icon, Nobel Prize-winning economist Friedrich Hayek said on the subject.
Is it going to be the three things?
There is
like graduate high school, don't have a kid, get a job or something?
no reason why, in a society that has reached the general level of wealth ours has attained, the first kind of security should not be guaranteed to all. Some minimum of food, shelter, and clothing, sufficient to preserve health and the capacity to work. Whatever the media might tell you, there isn't a conservative out there who would not agree with Hayek's statement. As I've documented in my book, Who Really Cares? When it comes to philanthropy and charitable giving, conservatives actually outgive progressives by a lot.
How do you break down conservative and progressive? And also, I wonder if if the charitable donations, I wonder if that includes donations to church. It might not, but...
Two sides.
Also, this has to be broken out for income as well. There's a lot we'd have to control for here. So firstly, income is important. Let's say the average progressive makes $1,000 a year and the average conservative makes $10 million a year. Then these numbers aren't as important either, right? So it'd be interesting to break this down on income, and then it's also interesting to know if we have if church contributions are included in this as well, because tithes are a little different, I think, than charitable donations.
Okay, so this doesn't tell us anything. We have a graph here talking about what conservatives giving more to charities than progressives. This doesn't tell us anything about whether or not, what the best policy is to lift poor people out of poverty, right? So I'm going to be very charitable here, right? And I'm going to assume that Prager, you means to say that, conservatives are really charitable. That means they have good intentions. See, they want to help poor people more than progressives do, and that means we have the right answer. But you can care about someone, like you can have the best intentions in the world and still not know what the best way is to lift them out of poverty. It's called being emotionally good, like having great empathy, but not being intellectually capable of knowing what the best way is to lift them out of poverty. And this doesn't even tell us that much. Even if you adjust for income and it shows that conservatives outpace progressives, there's like a tax loophole, and that's why conservatives give to charity. For example, let's say I'm a billionaire, right, and I have 10 billion in the bank. Now, I need to give a certain percentage of my income to IRS, right? So what I'm going to do is, right, I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to purchase a painting for, let's say, $10 million, right? And then I'm going to find a museum and I'm going to say that, hey, just tell the IRS that this painting is worth 50 million or 100 million. Like, there are museums that do this. Like, Trump has done this, allegedly, because I'm not going to get into legal trouble for doing this. Anyways, so you just take that art piece, right? You say it's worth 100 million. You give it to the charity or a museum, whatever, right? You write it off as a charitable donation. You've given 100 million worth or something, you get, let's say, 10%, 20% kickback, whatever it is, right? So you actually profit from it. You profit from a charity because you're overvaluing the asset that you're giving away, and you're receiving some sort of tax kickback or like a writable donation. So like you aren't taxed as much as you would have been if you had not given that to charity, and therefore you just make money by doing this. Yeah, it's fucked up.
Where the two sides disagree is on the role the government plays, not in protecting the poor from poverty, but in lifting them out of it. Here's a disturbing piece of data. On balance, since President Lyndon Johnson's War on Poverty programs came fully online in 1966, the poverty rate in America has hardly budged. That rate, as computed by the United States government, was 14.7% in 1966. And today, it's 13.5%. The rate has fluctuated a few points up and down over the decades. The net result is just 1 percentage point of progress. And this is after the government has spent.
So I've learned a lot of interesting stuff on data in my immigration studies because of how complicated data are and the importance of having like I don't know if you'd call a control a counterfactual or something, but let's say for instance, let's say that we're measuring the median income in a city. Okay, let's say that we implement some policy. Let's say that the median income is I'm just making up numbers. We'll say 50K. Let's say that we implement some policy. And then let's say like 8 years later, let's say that the median income is here. Okay, we'll mark this 5 years. So like a question might be, well, was this a successful policy? Well, if we measure it, doesn't really seem like it was a good policy at all. Didn't really do anything. But we don't actually know that by just one point of data. What we have to do is we have to use control cities that are of roughly equivalent like socioeconomic conditions to figure out if this policy was good or bad. So for instance, let's say that we had this, but let's say that we plotted out a few control cities that were roughly comparable, and let's say that we found out that they did this, right? Well, if we had like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 other cities that we plotted out that did this, and then we look at a policy that we enacted right here, well, now all of a sudden, our policy is really good. We're not necessarily comparing the growth from A to B. We might be looking at the difference between like other types of cities that have similar conditions. And much the same, on the other point, maybe other cities did this, right? Maybe other cities had this kind of growth. And now you're looking at your policy and it's like, well, the policy didn't do much. Well, actually it did. It did a lot. It had a very detrimental effect on your city,
Okay, so while Destiny is correct that we do need to measure these things and then figure out whether or not there's a difference, I would just feel that we've come so far from the 60s that is just unfathomable to me that poor people haven't been able to lift themselves out of poverty. Like, I would just ascribe it to some sort of laws or some kind of systemic inequality going on, because think about it, 60s, right? And then we had so much shit going on with the recession and the financial crash, and everything recovered. Now stock markets are at an all-time high, and going from 14.7 to like 13.5 or whatever, it just feels shitty. We should be at least 7.5%, like at least half it from 14.7. Like, I know it's not the exact half, but you get my point. We should be at like a better place right now for poor people. I know what's going on, so we should dig into a bit. We should do a little bit research and see what's going on. Oh, and the thing that PragerU has done is very disingenuous. You don't say that 14.7 to 13.5 is like a 1 to 2 percentage point difference. It's a, what do you call it? It's a 10 percentage point difference or something. Let's just check my calculations a bit. I've done something here. Yeah. So it's actually an 8 percentage point. It's actually an 8 percentage difference because, the way it's measured, like, I don't know if I need to explain how basic maths works. So I think I'll just, go along to the second thing. But actually, I feel like I should just explain this. If you decrease 14.7 by 10% or something, you'll get 13.5. I think that explanation should suffice. Whatever. Let's just look at this. The true US poverty rate is 4.5%, not 14.5%. Oh, so you lied. PragerU lied to us. Or maybe, if I'm being very charitable, they didn't lie and they just shit at doing research. Either way, PragerU is not a good source of information. And if you still think they're reliable, you need to leave some comment about what is the third option, right? Either they're lying or they're shit at doing research. So if there's some other reason you can think of, just leave it in the comment and tell me why, because I can't figure it out. Okay, let's just read this, right? Welfare poverty alleviation in the US in the 1960s was pretty much all about cash transfers. The US system counts this as income and determining who is above or below the poverty line. Poverty alleviation today involves almost no cash transfers at all. Just everything is done through the tax system. Okay, so basically in the 1960s, everything was done through cash transfers, but now that there are like welfare programs with like food stamps and all, right? If you just count for the non-cash benefits, poor people are actually doing better. So like the adjusted percentage poor in 2013 was 4.8%, not 14.5%. So it's actually fallen down quite a bit if you account for the adjusted rates, which you should account for because like food stamps do have value. Like food is valuable. Like I don't know how to explain that. So like I don't think I need to explain that is the thing. So let's just get back to the video. Now wait, how do I do this? It's here.
And this is after the government has spent over $20 trillion on poverty relief programs. $20 trillion, the current size of the US debt, and the needle has barely moved.
Okay, so this is like really disingenuous, right? Because you can't just cumulatively add all the previous years spending and just say, hey, this is like the current size of the US debt. Look how much we spent. Oh shit. Oh no. Oh no. No, this is not how you do it because it's always been like a set percentage every year, right? So like if you just add everything together and then you from what the past 2020, 1960s, 40, 50, 60 years, you add everything from the last 60 years, you'll get a lot more than 20 trillion that we spent in the last 60 years for what the food program, like the war on poverty, right? So that's one thing to consider. And another thing is that it's simply not true that you can just look at one factor as it. You can't just say, hey, it had a negligible effect on poverty. Look, we shouldn't spend anymore. No, that's not how it works. You need to look at how it affects the economy, right? You can't just look at one factor and decide, okay, I'm not going to spend anything. So an economist might look at this and say, hey, this doesn't have an effect on poverty, which it does because it might, right? Because poverty fell from 14.7 to 3.5, that's a 75% decrease. But forgetting that, an economist might say, hey, this has a really good effect on the economy. Our workers are being fed, they're more productive. So construction workers are building buildings faster, and this results in more people being able to shop or whatever, or the construction workers just have more disposable income, which leads them to buying more tools or more clothes or beer or whatever they buy. This leads to an overall ripple effect, which leads to a higher GDP every year. So this also translates to a higher tax revenue, right? The money just doesn't disappear. You're not just spending it away, right? It just goes into the economy. You are investing into workers, which then increase your GDP and your tax revenue. That's basically what it is. It just doesn't disappear into thin air. Yeah.
Now, it's true that the official poverty rate doesn't measure consumption. Certainly, poor people today have many more things than poor people did in 1970. Across all income levels, including the poor, Americans are likely to have cell phones, air conditioners, flat-screen TVs, computers, and a car. And life expectancy has lengthened considerably thanks to overall improvements in healthcare. But it demeans poor people to say that this material progress makes poverty less of a problem. Our goal should never be to merely make poverty less miserable for people. Our goal must be to make poverty more escapable. Many progressives offer a straightforward solution.
Number one, ready? Every piece of advice I'm about to give, okay, can apply just as well to poor people as it can to anybody, okay? Ready? Number one, okay? We're going back. Okay. Number one, if you drive a car that chugs gas, fuck you. I hope you fail in your life. I hope you're financially destitute. I hope you can't feed your kids. I hope the government comes in and takes them. Fuck you. If you drive around some shit that gets fucking 15 miles to the gallon or whatever, fuck you, dude. You deserve to be fucked, okay? You're so stupid. The amount of, like, poorish people that I saw that drove around like fucking gas guzzlers, bullshit.
Okay, so the problem with this is that it's making some sort of like a dichotomy between making poverty more escapable and making poor people less miserable. You can do both things together. Oh my god. Like, okay, let me just calm down for a second. Deep breaths. You can make poverty more escapable, right? And just make the lives of poor people less miserable. I give you one idea: UBI. You give everyone $1,000 a month, right? And this, of course, has great effects on the economy, but let's just forget about that. Uh, you give them $1,000 a month or whatever, like a certain amount of money, right? Now they'll use this to take care of their health. This makes them more productive workers and also leads to less, stress and overall increase in productivity. Plus, they'll be able to afford more training so they can, I don't know, learn how to be a plumber or something. Because I've heard that's pretty uh, a high level job. Like it generates a lot of income. Surprisingly, I've just been surprised to learn that. And they can also learn how to code or whatever it is they want to do. Okay, so education, training, and they don't have to take out payday loans. That's like the worst thing about being poor, right? You take out payday loans because you have an emergency coming up, because you're living paycheck to paycheck, you can't afford it. So payday loans charge you like, I don't know, an amazing amount of interest, right? It's just flabbergasting. So you really can't pay it back, and it just keeps compounding and compounding, and it's a really big burden. So that's what creates the like these three things: low education, low healthcare, and some sort of like debt that keeps on adding on every year. These three things create a vicious poverty trap, and a certain level of income per month would help you tackle that, thus making poverty less miserable for you, and it also makes it simultaneously more escapable. My 2 cents on this matter.
More funding for poverty programs. They believe that we need to transfer more wealth through government taxation from people who have money to people who don't. This is the income inequality argument. Conservatives have a different answer: more opportunity. Conservatives define success by how few people need help from the government, not by how many people we can enroll in government programs. When they see 60% more people on food stamps after the recession than we had before it started, conservatives say, that's not success, that's failure.
Okay, wait, let me just eat myself over somewhere more comfortable. 1 second. Yeah, I think we're good now. All right, let's get into this. So, the argument they're trying to make is that conservatives think that it's a failure when food stamp recipients increase. So, after recession, so let's say it went up from 30 million to 45 million between 2008 to 2011. So, like, that's after the financial crash happened. So, there should be less food stamp recipients because the economy is doing well. So, obviously, why do you require food stamp now? You should be better off. So, this is a failure, right? That's what they're trying to say. But this alone does not tell you anything about like what happened, right? So let's say that in 2008, 200 million people required food stamps, and because the economy was doing so bad that they said, okay, well, we can only give it to 25 or 30 million, right? So they just gave that much to whatever, right, to the 30 million people, and they said, we can't just give everyone the food stamps. So 170 million people, you're out of luck, right? Whatever. And now in 2011, your economy improves, and the people that required food stamps fell from 200 million to 100 million. I'm just giving hypothetical examples just to make it easy to understand, right? So it fell from 200 million to 100 million, but the recipients rose from 30 to 45 because you have a strong economy. That means you have more revenue to uh, tackle poverty, and that's where you're spending it, right? So your recipients increase, but the amount of people that needed it just decreased by 50% from 200 million to 100 million. So that's positive, right? And you're also increasing your uh, recipient level. So that's also actually a bonus, because now you can help lift more people out of poverty because your revenue base has increased, and those workers would just turn out to be more productive later on, right? So that would be a success because of these reasons that I just mentioned. And we should also notice that there's another thing. It might just be a failure, like uh, the amount of food stamps you've given in 2008, 2011, they're rising because uh, of adjustments that corporations have made due to the fact that you're giving those food stamps. So let's say I'm a Walmart worker, right? And I'm making, let's say I used to make $10 an hour or whatever, and they said, the government is giving you food stamps. That means you don't have to buy food anymore. I won't increase your wages in accordance to inflation because your food is being paid for by the government. So now, what has technically happened is that the government is subsidizing Walmart, right? So now the answer isn't to just, okay, so corporations are exploiting our policies, let's just get rid of it, no more food stamps. That's not the answer. What you would do in this case would be to just, form a policy, either a minimum wage or a tax policy targeted at Walmart that would just help you tackle these sort of things, like just to close these loopholes that corporations are taking advantage of. Yeah.
You see, conservatives believe that simply giving people money doesn't help them escape poverty. On the contrary, it can keep them locked into it. Getting things without working for them is a very hard habit to break, so much so that it can become a way of life. According to my research, earning your way out of poverty is much more empowering and enduring than being supported by a variety of government programs, which do little more than maintain people in their poverty.
Okay, so wait, let me just change the position. Wait. Yeah, so there is some truth to what he is saying. So let's just take a look. Right here. Yeah, so you can see that. Wait, let me just get myself here. Yeah, so you can see that he is telling the truth here, because the fact that it's capped to your income means that you lose your welfare benefits just as soon as your income hits a certain point. And I think the cap needs to be increased because, like, just take a situation right here. Wait, let me just. Yeah. So let's say that there's a couple that's making, no wait, sorry, it's a single mother with a kid that has like a 500 a month in food stamps and makes 1,200 a month, right? She gets $200 raised per month to 1,400 and no longer qualifies for food stamps. And now the problem is that if she takes the raise, she will struggle to eat. So she would be better off if she didn't take the raise and just stuck with the food stamps. So the answer isn't to just remove the food stamps outright. It would just be to either increase the cap to 1,600 a month, so that she has some breathing room. So she goes from 1,200 to 1,400, and then later on she goes to 1,600, and then she's fine with losing her welfare because now she can afford food on her own and still, uh, you know, buy more stuff because of the raise. So that's what we need to do. Right now, let's go back to the video. How do we do that? Yep.
This doesn't mean the government doesn't have a role to play. Indeed, wherever possible, the government and private charities should require people to work in exchange for social assistance. When we do this, we help people in two ways. First, through welfare, we're helping them meet their immediate material needs. And second, through work, we're helping them earn their own success, the key to a fulfilling and dignified life.
Let me just move again. Yep. Okay, so I like how he just talked about a federal jobs guarantee program. Like, it's an alt-left type position. It's a leftist position basically, and he's just owning up to it. I find that kind of funny. and it has problems of its own. I might just make like a new video on it later, but let's just talk about this dignified life thing, right? What is a dignified life? Uh, the dictionary would define it as showing a composed or serious manner that is worthy of respect. What is respect? A feeling of deep admiration for someone that is elicited by their abilities, qualities, or achievements, right? So you don't actually get to live a dignified life by becoming a construction worker or something. No offense to anyone who is a construction worker, but my point is that a society doesn't actually say that, hey, he's showing some kind of ability or a quality that is worthy of deep admiration. I don't see people deeply admiring construction workers out there, right? So the thing is that if you actually give them like a UBI, they might be in a better position to, I don't know, work on something. So you could tie it to like a computer science program or an art program that helps you develop the skills required to earn a basic amount of money per month. Like, I know a lot of people that are pursuing arts, and they have like a specific skill set that allows them to make a lot of money by becoming graphic designers inside uh, various marketing programs that are held by various companies that you can just sign up for, and a lot of people just don't have the money to sign up for those programs. So that's something that we could look into, right? So there are a lot of ways that people can live a dignified life, and just tying it to something that guarantees a job isn't it, because you just need to find something that actually needs to get fulfilled, right? That's step number one. Step number two is find out what training the person would require. And step three would just be to ensure that it's not out of their financial reach to obtain that training to get to the job that would help them lift themselves out of poverty. Yeah, that's about it.
Whether we're progressive or conservative, shouldn't that be what we want for our fellow citizens? I'm Arthur Brooks, president of the American Enterprise Institute for Prager University.